It was a day of big wins on day 3 of the Women's Asia Cup, with India beating UAE by 78 runs and Pakistan beating Nepal by 9 wickets. Both these victories are very important for both of these teams in keeping their campaigns going in the tournament. India has been on song. This is its second win on the trot, while Pakistan, which lost to India in its campaign opener, has managed to now give its campaign a little bit of a shot in the arm with this victory over Nepal. It's also a victory that will boost its net run rate, given that they got the chase done in the 12th over itself. Nidadhar, in one of the interviews to the broadcasters, spoke about how the side wanted to, at the very least, make the semi-final in this tournament in their preparation to that T20 World Cup. So towards that end, this is a very, very crucial win. We'll break down all the specifics about both of these victories, both of these matches in this video. Let's start with the India-UAE game. India, of course, was coming in very confidently after that win against Pakistan, but UAE entered this fixture licking its wounds after quite a shock defeat to Nepal. That particular game exposed their weakness in batting, bowling and fielding. It was a performance that left a lot to be desired in all three departments. And so notes were made, preparations were done, plans were drafted as Isha Oza came out for the toss on Sunday. When she won the toss, she opted to bowl because she wanted to give her bowling department and the fielding effort a little bit of confidence. She thought it would be better for UAE to try and restrict India to some sort of a decent total, which then the batters could, dedicatedly go down and chase. It wasn't a bad ploy at all, but on the other side, you have batters like Smriti Mandana and Shafali Verma who've been in the form of their lives, and they got off to a very similar start. There was no sign of a wicket in the first couple of overs, with these two just managing to find the gaps, finding the boundaries with a lot of ease. There was this one particular shot by Smriti, which I think, if I'm not wrong, was in the first over, where she just flicked the ball over the mid-wicket region to the boundary. It was absolutely brilliant to watch. Just the fluency of that shot could tell you in what fine touch Smriti Mandana has been in the last couple of weeks, if not months, in her international career. But of all of the games that she had to get dismissed early, it was in this match that she fell without contributing too much to the scorecard. The onus then fell on Shafali Verma, who was striking at a rate of over 200, and she went through quite fluently, got into the 30s, but then UAE managed to peg a couple of wickets back by dismissing Smriti, Shafali and Dayalan Hemalata in quick succession. The onus then fell on Harmanpreet Kaur and Jemimah Rodrigues to then stabilize the Indian innings. It wasn't too much work. Even though the wickets were falling, the scoring rate was very, very healthy. Harmanpreet ended up stitching two 50-run partnerships, one with Jemimah Rodrigues, where she scored bulk of the runs, and another with Richa Ghosh, where Richa just ran away with the scoring in order to get India beyond that 200 mark. This 201, which India ultimately managed, ended up being its highest total in women's T20Is, and it's also the highest team total in the Women's Asia Cup in the T20 format. Harmanpreet and Richa eventually got to their 50s. It was Harman's 12th T20I 50 and 11th as captain, while it was Richa's maiden T20I half century, which couldn't come at a better time. She also struck at a rate of over 220. So if you sort of look at the batting card, you have Shafali on top striking about 200, and then you have Richa, who's come to bookend the innings at the other side, also striking at around 200. A couple of years ago, we used to discuss this power hitting and, people actually coming and being explosive in the Indian order. I guess if you could go back and really pat them on the back and say, the Indian order is going to be fine, that would be this innings would be a perfect answer to that conversation that was being had a couple of years ago. Harmanpreet herself had a very interesting day. She was playing this knock a day after the 7th year anniversary of that 171 against Australia in England in the 2017 ODI World Cup. That knock really redefined what women's cricket was for an entire generation of aspiring cricketers. We saw Harman preferring the leg side for her strokes. There were a lot of boundaries through the onside, and it felt like for a very long time she was trying to get that shot over mid-wicket, which was like a trademark shot, especially in that 171 knock from 7 years ago. And she finally managed to do that towards getting that half century of hers. And it was delightful to watch the kind of control that even Harman was managing. It's great to see that she's also been consistently among the runs. It bodes well for India going into the World Cup. But Richa Ghosh has to be the conversation of the Indian batting innings. It was so effortless. Each time she would smack the ball to the boundary, she'd come back to Harman and have this childish smile on her face, which was extremely endearing to watch. It's the effortlessness that sort of makes that knock all the more brutal. UAE had absolutely no answers to her, and they were just frustrated. She was managing to find the gaps. Initially, she preferred to push her shots through the offside, but then she started widening her arc as she got settled into the crease, and we saw her hitting through that V. Delightful stroke play, and she ended up making 66, which eventually was a match-winning knock. The UAE bowling effort required a lot of improvement, and it's understandable. It's not every day that they get to play against opponents that are as brutal with the bat as India is, and as on song as the Indian batting order is at the moment. They were playing on a new pitch. It was not that used pitch from the last 2 days, so it was a fresh surface to reckon on as well, and it was a flat wicket. There was absolutely no purchase for the bowlers, and the bowlers really had to try to keep their line and lengths very disciplined so that they weren't being smacked around for runs. But there was a hint of nerves as well from UAE, because they were bowling very short and wide and allowing the Indian batters space to sort of find those areas that they're comfortable in and then send the ball to the boundary rope. A little bit of fielding blimps here and there were also there, but that's understandable. I mean, when you're under the pump and when you're being smashed for about 201, you can't really blame them for being a little down on momentum in the field. Come to the UAE batting response, and it sort of seemed like they were in a little bit of a shell early on. I think the nerves were to not lose wickets in a flurry in the power play, because you have bowlers like Renuka and Pooja who've come in with a very feisty reputation to get those early power play wickets. So UAE did manage to fend off the Indian bowling attack for a while. Tirtha Satish, who struggled to really find the runs. I think she was 0 of 8 balls at one stage before actually finding a way to get off the mark with a boundary, no less. Isha Oza was very, very crucial to this chase, and she made sure that she took her time to settle in. At some point, I think when you spend 3-4 overs not really finding the boundary or not really scoring at a brisk pace, the result of that match, especially when you're chasing 202, is sort of written on the wall right there. But I think for UAE, it was also about just sticking it out there and trying to put a better account of themselves with the bat, which is what they tried to do. They managed a power play score of 31 for 2, but then the next 4 overs, which until the 10th over mark would only give them 12 runs. So that can kind of tell you how sort of into the shell they got, and it became too cautious for their own good. They weren't able to strike the ball as fluently, and that just was perfect fodder for the Indian spinners and just the Indian lineup as a whole to really put them under the pump. Eventually, they finished with 127. Isha Oza stuck around for a while, but once she fell, it was just delaying the inevitable. And eventually, UAE crumbled, with India getting through with a 78-run win. This is a massive win for India. It's going to help their net run rate. They're any which way topping their group, so no harm done there. For UAE, it's 2 losses in 2 games, so there's a lot of conversations to be had in the team. Isha Oza spoke about how this was a lesson for them to really finish key passages of play, be it with the bat or the ball, to keep pressure consistent, to try and be a little more proactive in terms of their batting strategies, and to implement their plans properly. I guess a lot of preparation is required, but the experience of playing an opponent like this and the experience of getting thrashed like this will only help this team get better. There was one really funny incident in the Indian batting innings when Jemima was on the non-strikers end, and Vaishnavi Mahesh, when she was just going into bowl, she saw Jemima was off her crease and she threatened to run her out at the non-strikers end. Funnily enough, the Asian Cricket Council brought these 2 players together and did a really cute video about it as well. You should check it out on their social media. It was a little funny. If you ask me, given that it's in the rules, Vaishnavi should have just gone for it. It would have been the talking point of the game. But that's something that she mentioned, how people would just talk about it and it'll become this whole thing. So she just walked away with a warning. Besides the records that came tumbling in this game, this was also a special match for a certain Tanuja Kanwer, who had come in as Shriyanka Patil's injury replacement. Shriyanka has had to miss out on this game with a finger fracture, and she's been ruled out of the Asia Cup, and Tanuja Kanwer was brought in as her replacement. She got her maiden international wicket, and she has this knack of picking up very crucial wickets, and she took out Isha Oza, who is the top T20I scorer in this calendar year so far. So as big a wicket as it comes in this match. One area of development for India continues to be its fielding. Towards the end of the innings, there was a lot of shoddy collection around the boundary ropes. Those couple of runs could have definitely been avoided. We saw Deepti being involved in some, Shafali was involved here and there. And it was the usual suspects who were involved in these things. So that fielding conversation continues to be a conversation that has to be had with this group. It doesn't seem to be improving by leaps and bounds, which should ideally be the case, I guess, with this tournament. The second match of the day saw Pakistan and Nepal take each other on. Pakistan won the toss and opted to field. Knowing that they had to capitalize on their batting resources, Nepal swapped out Sabnam Rai, who would have been a solid bowling option, for Roma Thapa, thinking that they would have that additional batter. The irony is how the entire batting innings ended up going. We saw how Sanjana Khadka was the hero of that game against the UAE. She just took the game away from the opponent single-handedly. What Pakistan did really well was to dismiss her in the very first over, Fatima Sana doing God's work for her side when she took out Sanjana Khadka. That wicket, I think, sort of made the Nepal outlook in this game a little unsteady, because immediately the nerves kicked in for them. They knew that they had to save their wicket so that they could actually see the 20 overs through. And that resulted in a very, very conservative model of cricket, which did not help them at all. Sita Rana Magar and Kavita Kanwer had to do bulk of the heavy lifting at one stage. They had to do that resurrection job. An over from Sadia Iqbal, which saw 2 wickets fall in the span of a couple of deliveries, where Indu Burma and Kanwer were dismissed, really changed the momentum of the game. Pakistan didn't allow easy runs. Nepal tried to find the boundary, but to no avail. It was a better showing on the field from Pakistan. Pooja Mahato and Kavita Joshi's late efforts helped Nepal plump up its total to 108 for 6. That 3-figure mark was looking impossible at a stage, so Nepal walked off a very confident bunch, having just gotten through 100, and they had something to work with when Pakistan came to bat. Pakistan's batting innings was absolutely effortless. We saw Gul Feroza and Muniba really take the game away from Nepal. Nothing they were doing was tearing these Pakistani openers down. Again, it was the same mistakes that we saw of UAE. They were bowling very short, very wide. It was giving the Pakistan batters a lot of room to, whip out the reverse sweep, to have their array of shots across the field. They didn't seem like they were in any amount of trouble, and they wrapped up this chase in 11.5 overs, even though 1 wicket fell, that of Gul Feroza, after she got her half century. It was an interesting game for Pakistan, even though it is against a weaker opponent, because it gives them the confidence of that win in the bag in the tournament now. For Nepal, this would be a proper learning curve. It tells you just how much a dip in confidence can affect how a unit looks in a span of 2 days. The Nepal side that we saw 2-3 days ago was completely different from the one that turned out here. Even though the same energy, the same motivation was coming from the dugout, the confidence out in the middle when something goes wrong, how it can affect you, made all the difference in this game. It's a simple thing. Just look at their batting card. 3 out of the 6 dismissals were runouts. That itself should tell you just how nervy Nepal was in their batting effort. The other sign of desperation from them was how many bowling options they used. I think they used more than 7 to 8 bowling options against Pakistan, because they were just looking for a way to somehow find a wicket or to somehow stop the runs. It can't always be desperation and, throwing everything you have. This will also teach the side to come up with strategies to really look for weaknesses in the batters and be tight in your field so that pressure can mount from there. So that's day 3. What do we have in store on day 4? Sri Lanka is going to be taking on Malaysia in the 2 p.m. game, and Thailand is going to be taking on Bangladesh in the 7 p.m. game. Both of these matches are going to be interesting because of the pairings of these teams. Sri Lanka and Malaysia, I think, are a little more closely paired if you look at just what they bring to the table. I think these 2 bowling attacks will have a really great time going against each other. Thailand has Bangladesh to face. At this point, it kind of feels like Thailand's batting might just be a notch higher than Bangladesh's. So how they really go, and if Bangladesh can finally win a T20I fixture in this calendar year, will be something for us to see, given that they're going to be hosting that T20 World Cup 3 months later. Sportstar will be keeping track of all of the updates from the Asia Cup. So if you want to follow the tournament, do log on to our website for more. I'll see you guys in the next video.